Hello everyone and welcome to week 6, Planning in the Multiliterate Classroom. We are officially at the half of the course and we'll have a short break for your alternative field experiences and holidays, and we'll see each other back in January. So I'm going to try to keep this voice thread short and sweet. What I want you to start with is watching this video called Dr. Baked Potato, Scaffolding Complexity. It's by Shelley Moore, and I linked to it in perusal, but I'm gonna also leave the link here in VoiceThread so you can watch it. This is an approach to create tiered instruction, but I really find the analogy very good and very easy to understand. So watch that and comment about the video and what did you like about the video and what you didn't like as well. So after watching the Dr. Baked Potato video, you would have noticed that she highlights some steps to create these inclusive planning in the classroom to scaffold complexity. And the first one is to know the students. This week, you also engaged with the reading by the Ontario Ministry of Education. It's the Learning for All document, and it was all about planning and instruction in Ontario schools. So that document also emphasized in the fact that when you plan for assessment and instruction, you start by the students. And they were talking about the classroom profile. So this is the template for that classroom profile, and I pointed at some aspects of these for you in the reading and perusal. But basically, this is a helpful tool that you can have for your whole class. And one thing that I thought was missing, or that I really see that it's missing from these from this reading, the reading by the Ministry of Education, is that sociocultural aspect. We have talked so much about culturally relevant pedagogy and about including the context and the fonts of knowledge of our students. And this document really lacks all those mentions to the fonts of knowledge, except for um, this little observation that they have right here. You can see, I'm gonna highlight it for you here because it's so easy to miss. Traits related to socioeconomic or cultural backgrounds. So according to that document in this little box, you have space to provide about information about that student's socioeconomic and cultural background. As we know, sometimes these things are more complex than just putting a letter or putting a classification in that box, but now you know that you have that space where you can include the cultural background of your students, and I think it's much more important to include that than the learning style types of intelligence. No, don't go with that. Like I was explaining in the reading, that's a concept that has been debunked, and we now know that already all learners benefit from presenting different modes of representations and from catering to different needs, and it highly depends on the content that you are teaching to present that information in different ways. And all the students will be benefited if you decide to present a visual, and additionally you decide to present an oral explanation of that visual, and additionally you present some text. The more you reinforce the information, just all learners benefit. And it doesn't really have to do with a particular style that students may have. So keeping all those things in mind, this class profile will help you keep in mind all the students in your class and kind of recognize patterns of interest and of things that you can use, and particularly of strengths. If your class has a particular strength, then you can use that to boost their learning. And this is another one. This is another template. The other one was more individualized, but I really like this one, and it's also from Shelley Moore, the Dr. Baked Potato, and it's based on a more general approach. You got a classroom, and you fill up the information from those patterns that you notice and from those strengths in the classroom. And sometimes planning for the strengths is a really good approach, but just keeping in mind those needs or those stretches, the way that Shelley calls them, um, to because when you plan for those stretches, everybody will benefit as well. If you create, let's say that you are creating an additional activity on or an activity that caters to those particular stretches, all students will benefit from that. Um, so sometimes you plan for those supports to be in place from the beginning. It is a much more better approach. That was what the baked potato video was all about. When you plan considering those students' needs, then everybody will benefit from that. Here are some examples um, of these form already filled, and this is how you can use it for uh, to create a class profile. One of the things that I was looking at in the reading is that they mention a lot these classroom profiles in the context of school boards and how school boards use them. But in reality, each teacher will have their class profile. It's more likely that there are student profiles in place in schools, and you will have to put together your class profile because there's also a lot of mobility, right, in classrooms. So it's difficult to put this together and have it be used in every classroom. Imagine trying to do that this year with the students doing online learning and the students in classrooms, and it's a very complicated idea. Each teacher should have their classroom profile with the set of students that they have for that particular period of time. That it can be a year, or like this year, it can be a couple of months before you get shifted around. So well, keep those things in mind. There's really no classroom profile, like an official classroom profile that you will find, but it's more likely that they have student profiles, and it's what you will be dealing with. So, how to learn about your students? And there are many ways that you can learn about your students. One is consultations with current and previous teachers. A lot of this was in the readings. Consultations with parents or parents and student questionnaires, consultations with students through surveys, interest inventories, attitudinal surveys, conference or interviews, classroom observation, initial assessments, class profiles from earlier grades. They're non-existent, these class profiles. You will likely find student profiles. And and as much as we don't like them, we don't like EQAO, but they can give you a source of information, particularly of where students struggle with their assessments. So keep those things in mind when you get to your first classroom. These are sources of information for you. So please do that analysis and start with your students. And the second step is knowing the goal, is getting familiar with the curriculum. And I wanted to present examples of this, but it's so varied across all the curriculums. But it's good to know that recent curriculums like the math curriculum in Ontario, like the health curriculum that have a more recent date, they are going through this overall approach. So the overall expectations sometimes are carried from one grade to another. Sometimes they are in the same terms. So that will make your work so much easier because you can stretch a particular goal across several years. And that will give you a lot of space to do the next step, which is scaffolding complexity. But knowing your goal, because we don't want to forget about this accountability aspect of we are we are in an institution and we want the students to learn something that is curriculum related. Sometimes it's really challenging to match the goals with your curriculum with your students' needs, but that is the job of the planner, of the learning designer, the learning designers that we are. So so this is bottom line: know the curriculum, know what you are going to teach, and plan your experiences accordingly, because this is the next step, and this is scaffolding complexity. So generally, those overall expectations are complex. The most recent documents have these overall expectations follow or be embedded across several grades, and I think that is a really great approach. In older curriculums, you will have overall expectations changing each grade, but the important thing is that you take that overall expectation and look at the indicators. The indicators are often um, or are often the same overall expectations, but just broken down in little pieces. And that's how you scaffold the complexity. You you create an experience that where all need to eat that the baked potato, which is the goal, but then only some students will add the toppings, which is the complexity, which are some of the most advanced indicators. So for example, in math, you will have solving a problem through different methods. Maybe all the students will learn to solve it through one method, and just some of the students will learn to solve it through other strategies. So keep those things in mind when you are planning your learning experiences, because this is what really creates that differentiated instruction, that universal design for learning approach. And that's why I like the potato idea, because everybody is aiming at the goal, at eating the potato, but the toppings are a preference of the students, and you give them agency in deciding what those toppings are and what is better for them. So now let's connect all of this with multiliteracies. How do we create a learning by design approach or a planning strategy, connecting all these aspects of your students, of knowing your students? There is the placemat. Do you remember that? You did an activity 2 weeks ago with that, where you mapped an existing lesson plan. So the process of creating a new one is pretty simple. Once you have learned how to deconstruct a plan, you do the opposite. You place the goal at the center. That's the goal of that you want to reach with your students. And then the strategies target that goal. And you try to place strategies all across the four domains or the four knowledge processes that we have learned. And there is another helpful planning resource based on multiliteracies, and is the short topic planner. The short topic planner will give you an outline for creating lessons that will be like for a day or maybe for a week, while the placemat is for, let's say, for a whole unit or for a whole module, is something bigger. But the short topic planner will give you a better approach to plan lessons, to plan daily activities or maybe weekly activities. So I gave you an example here. So you're familiar with this lesson because it was from last week, from the week about culturally relevant pedagogy and anti-biased and anti-racist teaching. So you can read the example here on the screen and ask any questions you have about it here in the voice thread. So there will be no group work this week. What I had planned initially is that you will create a placemat with a lesson plan, like create a new lesson plan in groups. It would have been the ideal, but you have a lot of things to do this week. So what I'm gonna do is no group work this week, and we also don't have a synced ed talk. And the perusal reading and the voice read will be worth 1.5 each. So you're welcome. But remember that you have some peer evaluations to do, and I wanted to really give you time to do that and to give some critical evaluations to your peers in this week. You have a big compromise with that, and I wanted you to do it right. So that will be your work for the week, is to do some peers evaluations, and that will be worth 10% of your final grade. And that's it. Enjoy your alternative field experiences and bring back amazing teaching stories. Have a restful holiday period too, and I'll see you in January. Bye bye.